Hello everyone. Welcome. This is installment 5, episode 5 of Magic is Real. I'm Arden Lee, and I've been doing this series where I come on and I go live and I talk a little bit about some of the ways that magic has shown up for me in my own life that have been uncanny, that have been unmistakably experiences that were just too wild, too uncanny to be just coincidences. So welcome everyone who is signing on. I'm going to make sure that this video is getting shared out to the Repatterning Parlor, the group that I moderate. By the way, if you're not yet a member, I definitely invite you to come and join us there if you're interested in more community support and finding ways of share to a group. Here we go. Finding ways of creating new sustainable patterns in your own life. All right, we are all shared out. So the reason I'm doing this series in the past couple weeks is because I am currently enrolling, and we are down to the last 2 days. I'm currently enrolling for the Myths and Magic course that is starting this coming Sunday, October 18th. It is a 4-week course on narrative magic and using the power of storytelling and archetype in order to create transformation in your own life. Using the ability to call on those larger archetypes, those narrative arcs, in order to inform the reality that we operate within, right? Making those internal changes in the ways that we tell our own stories, in the narratives and the character traits that we allow ourselves to take on, and with that internal change, then manifesting a change in our external reality as well, in the way that we're treated and seen by others, in the ways that circumstances tend to align themselves for us, right? Especially if we are magical practitioners, right? Creating those internal changes that reflect in external changes in our reality. So if that is something that you're interested in, go ahead and send me a PM. As I said, we begin this Sunday. It's a 4-week deep dive into how to use narrative magic for personal transformation. And I'm really excited. We've got a great group of people signed up so far. There's a couple spots left. So if you're interested, as I said, go ahead and reach out to me and we'll hop on a chat and see if that's aligned. So today I'm going to be telling the story of an incident that happened back in, oh gosh, I guess this had to be about like 40 years ago now. And this was not a spell that I in any way cast on purpose. It was more of a wish that I made, but something happened during the moment when I was thinking and imagining about this intention that I had, this wish that I was focusing on, that ended up making it come true. Do I know the causation for that? No, not necessarily, but essentially all of the elements of spellcraft ended up happening in this one incident. As I said in the description of this video, I broke a swing. I broke a swing and I landed on my butt, right? I was in someone's swing in their backyard, right? Like just like a tree swing, a little rope swing, and it broke. And the thing that I was focusing on, the thing that I was imagining at the time, ended up happening exactly as I had imagined it about 6 weeks later. So I'm going to tell that story today. First, something that you should probably know before we go into this story is that, and this is also, in particular, this story is part of what allowed me to begin having an embodied understanding of what factors need to be present for an intention to get cast in a way that it will manifest. Because as I said, I wasn't casting a spell on purpose by any stretch of the imagination. I was envisioning something that I wanted to come true. I was fantasizing. I was having sort of a daydream. And as I was doing that, something happened. And later, everything I was daydreaming about, fantasizing about, ended up coming true. So I used to go to my friend's house down in San Diego, and we used to sort of have this little women's group where we would meet up down there, you know, about like maybe once a month, this little sort of witchy coven that we had, and we would end up doing a little working, all of us together. We had formed this group of about 5 women, and we were all just sort of exploring magic at that point in time. And I would go down to my friend's house fairly regularly, and I would stay there. She had these big sort of like sleepable bean bags. Her house was sort of set up to be able to have people over. She wanted to be able to facilitate events. So she had this really lovely space. There was a hot tub in the backyard. There was a hammock. There was a fire pit, and there was this rope swing in the back. There was this rope swing that was hanging from a tree, and it was like really just like two thin pieces of rope and a little piece of wood. And they used to joke about it at the house that I was like the only person who would be able to use that swing like as an adult and not have it break. And it did end up breaking anyway. But for a while, I would go down there, and it was just so relaxing. You know, I'd had a swing in my backyard when I was a kid, and I would like sit on it, and I would, you know, just for hours, you know, like swinging back and forth. So going down there, it was really like this really comforting sort of regressive thing. So I'd sit in this swing, in this tree swing, and eventually like everyone in the house would kind of like be like, okay, we're going to bed. And I'd be like, okay, great. I'm going to be on this swing for another hour or so. And then, you know, I'll go to bed when I feel like it, and I'll see you in the morning. So one of these nights, I was there in the backyard, and I was swinging on this swing, and I had a crush at the time. I had a crush on this guy who was in this band. It was him and his bandmate, and I knew that they were really kind of stressed out at the time. That I was sort of, you know, hearing from them, and I considered them both friends, you know, and they were just dealing with a lot of stress in their own lives, you know, in career stuff and whatever. I mean, all of us were dealing with stress to an extent, right? It was 2016, and we're going into what would be like the wild ride of this, you know, this incredible ascension that has really sped up over these last 4 years. So it's fair to say like a lot of us were stressed out, right? And I was there, and I was thinking about it, and I was like, you know, man, we really got to get them down here at some point, you know, to just like stay over for a night or two here at this beautiful house that's like set up to have, you know, like people be able to stay over and have an event, you know, like maybe a class or something, like some sort of a guided meditation. You know, I was always going to those things down in San Diego, and I'd gone to one of them with his bandmate once. You know, I'd taken her down there, and you know, in this sort of attempt to be like, hey, we're all stressed out right now, let's go to a meditation class and like learn some meditation exercises, let's all feel better, you know, that kind of thing. And so I was thinking, I was like, man, you know, that it would be so good for them, and you know, it would be like a night to like, you know, just enjoy and like be in your body and go in the hot tub if you want, or sit around the fire pit or whatever. Like this house just has this real healing sort of energy to it, this really playful, you know, very like grounding, earthy, healing kind of vibe to it. And I was thinking about that, and so there I am, and I'm on the swing. I'm swinging back and forth, and I'm a little bit stoned too, right? I'm a cannabis user at nighttime. I use it to self-regulate for sleep. So there I was, and I was imagining it, and I'm looking like I'm on the swing, but I'm looking at the house, and I'm kind of seeing everything happen. I'm sort of seeing like people going in and out of the sliding screen door, and there's the hot tub, and I'm just kind of visualizing and imagining this, right? I'm just like, that would be so cool, you know, if that happened or whatever. And as I'm getting lost in thought, all of a sudden the swing that I'm on, the rope swing that I'm on, breaks, right? It was just this like two thin pieces of rope and a little piece of wood, and sure enough, it breaks. And I go flying through the air. Like, it was a pretty long swing, you know. I go flying through the air. I land on my ass, and I'm fine. I didn't break anything or anything like that. I had a pretty big bruise, if I recall correctly. I was like, ugh. So I picked myself up on the ground. I'm like, oh my God, am I okay? Yeah, everything's fine. You know, I landed on my butt. I managed to sort of like slide, like land on my side a little bit. So I was okay. And I was like, wow, that was weird. And then I didn't give it too much thought for a while. It just sort of, you know, I was bummed the swing broke. I couldn't swing on the swing anymore. I was like, oh well, you know. But I didn't really think a whole ton about the mechanics of that until much later. And something that I've learned, and that I was invited to meditate on after this happened in particular, was this idea of what are the elements of spellcraft, right? What are the elements of us casting an intention? And as I've said before in some of this series, you know, when we cast an intention, when we intend for magic to happen, it always has to come through the pipeline of physical reality, right? It's not like it's just going to be like lightning out of the sky or something that defies the laws of physics. That's why a lot of people think that magic is not real, because they've never seen anything defy the laws of physics. But even magic must, as far as my experience goes anyway, I don't know, I haven't seen any like statues crying blood tears or anything. I don't know how that works, so maybe. But as far as my experience in magic goes, magic still must abide by the laws of physical reality, by the laws of physics that govern our universe, right? It can't break the laws of physics just because it's magic. It has to still come through a similar pipeline, right? And the ways that we achieve sending an intention or a wish, right, or a spell that we're casting, the way that we send something out to the universe and say, this is the thing that I want to happen, is we have to have some sort of element of crossing over. I've talked about this a little bit before, right? So there's something like we can burn a piece of paper, right? That's a way of like, okay, my intention is here in physical reality on this piece of paper. I burn it, right? And it's like it dies. It crosses over to the other side, right? Candles, candle magic, same thing. I have a candle, I've carved something on the side of it, I burn the candle down, and that wish, that intention crosses over to the other side because there's a candle, and now there is not a candle, right? We talked about poppets too, right? Some people who work with poppets, with dolls, right? Like a paper mache doll that you give your wishes to, and then you burn it, right? And it goes over to the other side. It delivers your wishes to the powers that be that are on the other side of the veil. Another way to do this is with sex magic. Sex magic is like, people like to, they hear about it, they're like, ooh, sex magic, it's really sexy, but it's actually just a very technical thing. It's this idea that at the moment of climax, it's actually our spirit that briefly exits our body and crosses over to the other side before entering the body once again. That's why the French refer to the orgasm as the little death, right? Le petit mort. And so with that, our spirit is briefly crossing over, that's why we focus on our sigil or on our intention at the moment of orgasm in order to bring it to the other side, right? We carry it with us, we briefly cross over, and we sort of like put it there, right? By carrying it with us, visualizing it or intending for it, and then returning to our bodies. In the same way, a state of no mind can also do this, right? A state of no mind is very similar to, our state of mind at climax. It's where our body is in such a state of shock or non-thinking, right? We can't be in our thinking brain, that essentially what it's doing is it's having that moment of blankness where it kind of crosses over. So my teacher, Grant Morrison, for example, would sometimes launch sigils by going bungee jumping, right? Because going bungee jumping achieves that state of no mind in which it's your spirit that's briefly crossing over and then coming back into your body. So in the same way that all of these elements make for a really strong casting, right, in all the ways that this can possibly happen. When I broke the swing, because I was swinging on it, a couple of things happened. One is that the swing went from being a swing to being a not swing, right? It went from being a swing, right? Like our idea, our platonic ideal of swing, right? to breaking. And after it broke, it's just a couple of pieces of rope and a piece of wood that are lying there on the ground, right? Or like still hanging from one side of the tree, right? It's not a swing anymore. So as a swing, the swing has died. The idea of swing has crossed over, right? And at the same time, because it broke while I was on it and I was in midair, I achieved also that state of no mind that my teacher, Grant, was purposely facilitating when he was launching sigils by going bungee jumping on purpose, right? So there's a couple of things that add to that. Add to that also the fact that swinging back and forth is also a means of charging, right? Repetitive action. If you've seen group workings before, you'll see a lot of people do things with drumming, chanting, there's a rhythm that their bodies get into. And this is a way of sort of charging that intention because you're building energy around it, right? You also may have an altered state of consciousness that can come about from rhythm and from being in repetitive motion, right? So even swinging on a swing, right? Something that we think of as being a pretty mundane kind of activity, but that sort of rhythm and the rocking back and forth, the literally swinging back and forth can also alter our state of consciousness. Also, as I mentioned before, I am a regular nightly cannabis user. So at that point in time, when I was on that swing, I was also under the influence of a little bit of cannabis, right? So that also contributed to a state of altered consciousness that's going to make that casting even more powerful, right? So this is how I started to understand better what elements need to be present, or are invited to be present, or if present can make a casting even that much stronger, right? I started to observe all of these elements that were around this one particular incident that happened, that were also very common in the workings, like the group workings in witchcraft that I had been familiar with, that I had participated in or observed at that time, or the solo workings I had done for myself, etc., etc. I started to really start to understand how the mechanics of all this works, right? So there I am, I'm in this backyard, I'm on a swing, the swing breaks, and at the time that the swing breaks, I'm imagining, right, I'm imagining this thing happening where I'm like, oh man, we really gotta get, like, we really gotta get, my friends who are, who are in this band, this guy I have a crush on, and our mutual friend or whatever, like, it would be so great if they were to be here for, for an evening and come hang out and just relax, maybe for an event or something like that, maybe for like a meditation class or something like that, and they could stay over for a night. It would be really, really fun, right? So I'm thinking that's what I'm thinking, that's what I'm imagining and visualizing as the swing breaks, right? And then about 6 weeks later, we're playing some shows. I played a show that weekend, and they're about to like go on a sort of West Coast tour, right? And we had just done this show. We're opening for the same headliner. I was opening for the headliner in LA, and they were opening for that same headliner in San Diego. And we all kind of knew one another. And what happens is, about 6 weeks after the swing incident, they're starting, we're playing these cluster of shows together, and I'm about to drive down to San Diego because we're about to have another one of these sort of witchy women's weekends workings together, right? We've done this sort of women's group, like a private women's group that we'd formed, and we'd met at this house, and we would do these sort of workings together to explore magic in a group setting, right? And all of a sudden, the night before, I get a text from this guy, and he just texts me, he goes, "Hey, you there?" And he was someone who was really super avoidant, so for him to text me out of the blue was just like unheard of, right? So I'm like, it was so strange that when I wrote him back, I was like, yeah, is everything okay? And he texted me back, and he's like, yeah, sorta ish. I just found out, he tells me, I just found out that the place that we were supposed to stay in San Diego for this leg of our tour fell through. We were supposed to stay at someone's place while they were out of town, and they left, and they went on their vacation as planned, and they forgot to leave the key under the mat. And because they forgot to leave the key under the mat, we can't get in. There's no way for us to stay there. So I know that you know some people in San Diego, and I was wondering, do you know of any place that, me and my bandmate could potentially crash the next 2 nights around our show? And I was like, oh yeah, absolutely, come stay at my friend's house. And we all sort of knew each other. They had met each other before, and so of course I checked in with her, and I was like, hey, is it cool if, like my crush and his bandmate, like stay over, like this would be really fun or whatever. And she was like, yeah, of course, it's set up for that, literally, the house had all these big, like I said, these like giant sleeper bean bags, and she was someone who was always interested in like throwing events and having parties, and sure enough, our women's group was meeting there anyway. We had this great, like, we would always have a little potluck dinner that we would plan, right? So I was like, yeah, no worries. And I was like, I'll be there too. It'll be fun. Come down. Yeah, absolutely. Of course you can stay here. He was like, are you sure? Like, is she going to get mad? There's like a million people at her house. And I was like, no, it's fine. It's literally set up for this. I just texted her. She's totally cool with it. Here's the address. I'll see you there tomorrow night. So sure enough, they show up, and as they get there, we're like in the middle of preparing for the potluck, right? So they walk in, and it's like him and a guy friend of his who is like their roadie or like tech guy or sound guy or whatever, and we make the boys man the grill, and we get everything set up for this dinner, and we all have dinner together. And sure enough, later that evening, my women's group goes out in the yard and we do our little working together, right? So what happened was there they were, staying over for a night, 2 nights actually, at the very house that I was imagining, that I had been envisioning 6 weeks prior when I was on the swing and the swing broke. And what did I imagine? I was like, we have to get them, to come hang out for like, and stay over for a night or two on a night when there's like a really fun event happening down here. So sure enough, there was an event. It was a private event. It was my women's group meeting, right? It wasn't quite exactly like the public class that I had intended to, say, invite them to, right? But there was an event, and they arrived at the house, and they stayed over, and we all, honestly, like everyone really had an amazing time. And the following night, they played their show, and we all, me and most of the women who were in the women's group with me and some of our friends, we all went to the show and we got to cheer them on. And the headliner takes the stage and he said, yeah, the guys in the other band here have been telling me they've been staying at this witch house. We all want to go see the witch house afterwards. So sure enough, the headliner gets the entire tour bus to go and pull up to this, and it's like on the side of a mountain, in like rural San Diego, right? Like this giant tour bus like pulling up the side of the mountain, and all of us like hanging out and standing around the fire pit in the yard, and my friend whose house it is actually ends up hooking up with the headlining artist. So it's almost like the universe had sort of been like, oh, thank you for being in agreement with bringing this intention to life, and we're going to give you a little reward as, for thanking you for your participation. You're going to also get to enjoy this just as much as everyone else. So it was only afterwards, after another few days or weeks had passed by, that I suddenly made the connection that the thing I had wished for when I was sitting on the swing and the swing broke had absolutely come true 6 weeks later, because someone forgot to leave a key under the mat before they left their home, right? And it happened to line up exactly on the night that month that we had chosen. It was also like a big full moon or something like that. There was like, it was like the night of the super moon, right? It was like, I remember there was something especially magical about it. And we hadn't even realized, my women's group hadn't even realized that it was the night of the super moon that we chose for our working. It just happened out that way. It just happened to be the day that we could all put on our calendars at the same time. So we were there for an event. We're at the very house that it happened at. We're at the house where the swing broke, right? With all the hammock and the fire pit and the hot tub and everything in the backyard. And, and there we were for this event that we were doing, just my women's group privately. And we had our potluck dinner, and everyone got to join in for that. And then sure enough, that's how it all manifested and how it came true. So again, this was not something that I cast on purpose, right? This was a wish I had or something that I was fantasizing about. And I'm really meticulous about making sure that I don't do magic on anyone else's free will, right? Because that typically doesn't go very well, right? It really has to be in alignment, right? For everyone to want the same outcome. So it's not something that I would have done on purpose, right? If I'm ever casting in particular for something that I want from someone, I always ask for the universe to send, the best person, right? The ideal, someone who embodies this quality, or someone who's like this, right? Or someone who's in alignment with the thing that I want, right? So I'm very careful about how I do that. But in this situation, I would say that probably everyone would have agreed that it all worked out, because the woman whose house it was happy. She got to throw a party, and she ended up, getting to hook up with the headliner of the concert the following night, right? The people in the band were happy because they had a place to stay, and it was probably more fun than the place that they were going to stay anyway, because we got to feed them, and we got to have this lovely potluck dinner together and have this really amazing energy. And sure enough, it was everything that I had envisioned, which was getting some folks who I kind of perceived were maybe stressed out and could use a really fun night of chilling out and being grounded and being, all of us being in our bodies and being in this really healing environment, getting to do that, right? And getting to do that on a night of an event that we had going on there, the potluck dinner and the women's working that we were doing privately and everything like that. So and the fact that it was no one even, I live in Los Angeles, the other from the story, they also lived in Los Angeles. It was yeah, San Diego is only about 2 hours from there, but it was the fact that all of that would have to work out on that specific day, and that this conglomeration of events just came together. It was just super uncanny. So it was an invitation for me to look back at all of the elements that had to be there in order for that to manifest and come true. And I traced it back to that moment when the swing broke, right? Because we had that element of crossing over, the swing breaking, swing becoming not swing. We have that moment of no mind, right? Where my own spirit, in the shock of having the swing break and flying through the air, then briefly leaves my consciousness, right? Whoa, what is happening? Just like Grant Morrison when he's casting sigils by bungee jumping, right? Orchestrating that state of no mind on purpose, right? Whereas mine happened by accident. I realized the swing was going to break, right? And all of these elements, right? The charging up of the intention, right? Imagining it while I'm swinging, being in an altered state of consciousness, both from the swinging itself as well as from my nightly cannabis use, right? All of these things. So that's how that taught me those particular elements of spellcraft, and what mechanical elements must be present in order for an intention to have a great chance of manifesting when it gets projected to the other side in that manner. So that is the experience of how that particular bit of magic showed up for me in my life at that time. And it was a super fun experience for everyone, I hope anyway, right? I believe that if for something to manifest like that without my directly intending it, I really believe that the universe is very much on our side in that manner, and won't say as long as our intentions are good, it's not like we can just go around accidentally, manifesting things in a way that the universe is not looking to trick us, right? The universe is not looking to be oh, you said that thing, or you thought that thing, and then you fell in a pothole, so I guess it's, going to come true. I like to think that in this instance, I like to think that the universe had an understanding that this conglomeration of events would really be in the highest good of all involved. Because as I said, I think everyone had a pretty good time. I think it worked out for everyone. So yeah, so that's how that happened. That's how I learned that particular lesson. And that is yet another instance that has shown up in my life that has shown to me that magic is real. And again, if you're interested in joining the Myths and Magic course, we're going to talk about how to use narrative magic, the form of magic that is that comes through the medium of storytelling, narrative magic and archetype. And if you want to learn for 4 weeks in a fun container with me and your fellow magical peers, if you want to learn how to be able to harness that particular brand of magic for your own personal growth, transformation, and to be able to tell your story and have your own internal state change in relation to what kind of permissions you give yourself for what kind of story you're living and what kind of archetypes you're embodying in your reality, so that you can see those external changes in your external reality manifest, then yeah, reach out to me, shoot me a PM. We begin this Sunday, so it's going to be less than 48 hours from now. So go ahead and send me that message and we'll hop on a call and see if it's aligned, if it's the right time for you right now. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been episode 5 of Magic is Real. I'll be back tomorrow for the last episode in this series, where I'll talk a little bit about, what am I going to talk about tomorrow? Oh, tomorrow I'm going to talk about how I knew my cat was my soulmate cat. The weird synchronicities that showed up that from the universe that proved that I was choosing the right cat for me. That's a pretty fun story too. So maybe I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and have a wonderful rest of your afternoon.